Question for you. Who has the most duel wins in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX? Judai duels the most and is the main protagonist, so gotta be him, right? Well, the D has been atop the Pro League for 10 years, so maybe it's him. Well, Yugi and Kaiba technically make appearances in the show, so maybe it's one of them. Wrong, and wrong. While most of it is off-screen, the heavily implied highest win count is held by Mr. T. Nope, not that guy. This guy, aka Trueman, an emissary of darkness, the final villain of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. In Season 4, Darkness is trying to imprison everyone on Earth in the world of darkness, and to accomplish this, he spawns a bunch of Truemen who go around taking out duelists left and right. At one point, only 4 people appear to remain. Judai, aka Jaden, Johan, aka Jesse, Fubuki, aka Atticus, and Yusuke Fujiwara, who is actually controlled by Darkness himself. By the final battle, only Judai remains. So, wait, if everyone has been captured, does that include Yugi, Kaiba, Joey, the undefeated Taya, and all of the great duelists from the original series? Well, let me check my trusty old Merriam-Webster for the definition of everybody. Yeah, Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey are in fact people, so theoretically would be included in everybody. Does that mean Trueman defeated these legends, and if so, does that make Trueman the true king of games? Let's discuss. The first question we need to answer is if everybody actually has been captured by Darkness. The most definitive proof we have of this is Judai saying so himself, questioning, all the people in the world have disappeared? Now, technically, this isn't foolproof since Judai says this after looking at some monitors that allegedly offer a view of the entire world, but let's take the dialogue at face value because the writers clearly want us to believe that, yes indeed, the only person left is Judai. So what is the pushback? It takes place 9 episodes earlier when O'Brien first discovers that people are disappearing from Domino City. In this scene, we're shown names disappearing off a list, but the only name to not disappear is Seto Kaiba. Kaiba's name also has something stamped in red under a column titled Notes, but unfortunately it's not legible, so here's hoping the impending remaster answers that question. Anywho, this is the scene people will use to argue that Kaiba was not defeated by Trueman. The retort to this, of course, is that, again, it's 9 episodes earlier from when Darkness finally appears, and Kaiba could have fallen by then, explaining why Judai comes to believe that no one other than him remains on Earth. The other piece of evidence comes from Darkness himself in his duel against Judai, where he explains why he has surfaced in the first place. He explains how his world is basically the reverse of the dueling world and says if those duelists that wield the cards of duel monsters just had continued to keep light in their hearts, then the face-up world's dominance might have been preserved. But a majority of duelist hearts have become stained by darkness, and so they flowed naturally into my world. The key word here is majority, which could imply everyone but Judai, but you would think he'd have a more all-encompassing word to use here. Majority more typically implies most, not all but one or even all but two if you want to throw Johan into that, implying that there are other duelists beyond Judai whose hearts were not stained by darkness. Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey are possible bets to fit this criteria. My opinion is that yes, Judai is in fact the only human left. Narratively, if the writers had Judai say, everyone is gone, except Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey, Darkness becomes far less imposing and the whole situation far less dramatic. So how does this square with the previous Darkness quote? The other key words here are that those with darkness in their hearts flowed naturally, suggesting that those who don't have darkness can still be taken forcibly, like how Darkness intends to do with Judai. So the question is, how did Darkness get rid of the big three that Pegasus claimed to be the best duelist in the world? Before we get into the X's and O's of card games, let's put some color around Darkness and the powers he has. Does Trueman/Darkness have to defeat a person in a duel in order to capture them? The short answer is no, he doesn't. We know this by the simple logic that not everyone in the world is a duelist, but the whole world has disappeared. The answer to how they disappeared is in that earlier quote by Darkness where he states those with darkness in them flowed naturally into his world, meaning Darkness does not have to defeat them to take them. So the real question is, can Trueman capture a duelist without defeating them in a duel? And the answer to this question is yes. The proof here is the fact that Fujiwara and Johan both disappeared before Judai's duel with darkness. We can try to explain this by saying that Fujiwara was already controlled by darkness, and that Johan's life points were reduced to 0 in the three-way duel between him, Judai, and Fujiwara, but the fact is that both of them remained after the duel ended and didn't disappear until shortly after. So unless a quick unseen duel took place in the time it took Judai to run in and out of Duel Academy, what's more likely is that darkness captured them without dueling. To understand why that's a possibility, let's understand the situation the world is in when Fujiwara duels Fubuki. At this point, the only humans remaining are those two plus Judai and Johan. When the latter two arrive, Fujiwara states, "Judai, Johan, the reason I postponed dealing with you is because you are unfortunate humans that cannot become one with darkness." The takeaway here is that darkness was able to prey on the inner darkness of everyone else in the world, but because these two didn't have it in them, he figured he, as in Fujiwara, not Trueman, would have to defeat them in a duel to take them. But this isn't an accurate assessment by Fujiwara, because we know both Judai and Johan are susceptible to darkness. With Judai, the instance comes after his duel with Sayo, where he runs into Johan but perceives him as Trueman and thus duels him. After Johan knocks him to his senses, Judai remarks that the darkness within the card Sayo snuck into Judai's deck spread to the rest of his deck, thus impacting him. This darkness likely preyed on the gentle darkness to power within Judai, a source of power that, as Judai is familiar with, can cause destruction if he can't control it. With Johan, the example comes in the duel against Fujiwara, where he realizes he was wrong about Johan having no darkness and remarks, "It seems he was no exception. Anxiety festers in the dark and shadow, tying him to despair. People just can't help it. They're creatures who can't stop thinking. That's why darkness's world exists." The darkness being referred to here within Johan is the desire to defeat Judai in a duel. The reason why Trueman wasn't able to prey on these bits of darkness within either duelist is because they have forces protecting them. For Judai, that is Yubel. As Fujiwara quite explicitly states, Judai has the power of Yubel, which gives him no vulnerability. Even beyond that is his power of the gentle darkness. For Johan, that is the spirits of Rainbow Dragon and the Crystal Beast. As Fujiwara states, "As long as they're here, I cannot reach that light, Johan's mind." But it's not just that, because even with the spirits protecting Johan, Fujiwara is able to assess the deepest recesses and find his so-called darkness. So why don't his tricks work against Johan? Well, as Sapphire Pegasus states a few episodes earlier, "You both triumphed over the darkness in your hearts. I'm sure you can stand against darkness's terrible power." What this shows is that both of them have channeled their inner darkness into a source of light. For Judai, that meant not giving in to the allure of power. For Johan, that meant finding excitement in his rivalry with Judai that drives him to be a better duelist. As Johan and Judai state, "My bonds with the Crystal Beast, the will for justice inside my heroes, and my friendship with Judai, Fujiwara, they will pull you out of darkness's world." This actually squares very nicely with the earlier quote from Darkness that had duelists kept light in their hearts, his world wouldn't be overtaking the known world. As Judai executes his final move to defeat Fujiwara, the grip Darkness has over Fujiwara slips and Fujiwara reunites with Honest. This brings us back to how Fujiwara and Johan were still taken despite not having lost a duel to Darkness. At the end of the day, they still have some bits of darkness within them that Darkness, with his full power, can prey on to absorb them into the world of darkness. And while Judai also has darkness in him, this is where his specific relation to the monster spirit saves him as compared to Fujiwara with Honest and Johan with the Crystal Beast. Judai and Yubel are fused spirits, so Darkness, as Fujiwara stated earlier, can't snatch him without defeating him in a duel. In fact, Darkness himself calls Judai a strange creature in which both spirit and human souls dwell, and goes on to say that he will purge Judai because he's not compatible with Darkness's world, suggesting that even if Darkness could absorb Judai from an overpowering him standpoint, he still couldn't because Judai is incompatible with the world of Darkness. That's why he says that defeating Judai in a duel will leave him in a permanent state of limbo. The conclusion is that Darkness can capture people without defeating them in a duel. So while Fujiwara and Johan have strong bonds with their respective monster spirits, they are not fused with them, and thus still susceptible to falling into the world of darkness irrespective of winning or losing a duel. I'll preemptively answer one question here. If Darkness can snatch up everybody without dueling, why bother sending Trueman everywhere to defeat people in duels? The answer here lies in what Darkness says to Judai, that humans with power gave into darkness of the heart, and that is what empowered him. This suggests that Darkness's power can grow and diminish. He's not omnipotent. His power comes from people giving into the darkness in their heart, which is how he's defeated. It's not just because he lost the duel to Judai, but more importantly, because Judai's words instill light in everyone's hearts, and upon being freed from the world of darkness, darkness shrivels up. Conversely, as more people give into darkness, the more powerful he becomes. So early on, he needed to duel people into submission, but after billions of people have been absorbed, he has reached near omnipotent status and can capture the few remaining souls without resorting to dueling. The first 3 duels we see of Trueman are all losses.
I'm pitiful!
So he doesn't exactly inspire confidence as a guy who could take down the top shelf of duelists. The caveat here is that these losses all come to Judai. Trueman goes on to rack up a nice resume of victories, including O'Brien, Onjome, Asuka, Sho, and Kenzan. However, given that all of these are students, it's hard to argue any one of them are on the level of Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey. But the thing about Trueman is that he doesn't play nice. We see this on full display in his duels against O'Brien and Kenzan. Against the former, he leverages a painful memory O'Brien has from his past where he chose to save his father over his mother in a fire. Against the latter, he realizes Kenzan doesn't have any darkness he can exploit and thus creates a false memory within Kenzan of a time he was a carnivore dinosaur who attacked other dinosaurs, and now those dinos are attacking him. Both of these are the most intense forms of psychological warfare. So knowing how Trueman duels, where it's more than just cards and strategy, could he have defeated even the best of duelists? To answer that question, we need to first ask, would these mind games work on Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey? Joey is the most susceptible to Darkness's psychological tricks. He doesn't have a connection to a monster spirit or Millennium magic, so if any of these 3 were beaten in a duel by way of Trueman/Darkness weakening their resolve through mind tricks, it would be Joey. One feather in Joey's cap is his willpower, which could withstand Immortal Phoenix Raw as well as overcome the brainwashing power of the Millennium Rod, albeit with Yugi's help. But my pushback here is that willpower is not what dictates whether one can overcome Darkness's tricks. Johan overcomes the tricks by channeling his rivalry with Judai into a productive force. Could Joey do the same? Arguably yes, but then we also have to keep in mind that Johan was further protected by the crystal spirits, what Joey doesn't have. In my opinion, it is highly likely that Trueman tapped into a weakness within Joey, like torturing him with thoughts of his broken family, or memories of himself as a bully, especially picking on Yugi. He could have even taken on the likeness of Serenity to force him into making the least optimal plays. Kaiba is an interesting one, because his thirst for power and rivalry with the Pharaoh could easily be preyed upon by Darkness, and like using Serenity's likeness against Joey, Mokuba's likeness or even the fear of losing him could be used against Kaiba. However, with Kaiba, there is a potential connection with monster spirits that could protect him, namely his connection with Kisara and Blue Eyes, which could create a protective force against the tricks of Darkness. If nothing else, it would make for a fascinating aesthetic where Trueman infiltrates Kaiba's heart, but the light of Kisara and Blue Eyes burst stream of destruction him out of there. We also have the willpower element with Kaiba, as brought to you by the Dark Side of Dimensions, where he is able to overcome Diva's Plana and summon Obelisk from the ground. Although since that movie follows manga canon, maybe it's not so admissible as evidence in the anime debate. We could also play semantics with Judai saying that all people in the world are gone by claiming that Kaiba is stuck in ancient Egypt trying to defeat Atem, or maybe he's somewhere in outer space fulfilling that promise to teach aliens how to duel. But as it stands, we know that Darkness is at least targeting Kaiba with his name being on that list. So if he is on Earth, but Trueman had difficulty getting rid of him, I would think that Kaiba goes down a path like Johan where Kaiba doesn't lose a duel, but Darkness, after powering up through having absorbed billions of other people, captures Kaiba without dueling because he doesn't have a fused spear with Blue Eyes like Judai has with Yubel. And then there's Yugi. Yugi without Atem and the Millennium Puzzle still has his connection to the monster spirits, but at this point, we're talking about Karibo as compared to the likes of Rainbow Dragon and the Crystal Beast, which still couldn't protect Johan from Darkness. Now with that said, what is the inner turmoil or anxiety within Yugi that Darkness would prey on? Because recall that Fujiwara was under the impression that Johan and Judai could not become one with Darkness since they had no darkness in them. If there's any character we could fit into this category, it would be Yugi, who is as pure as they come. Maybe Darkness pulls a similar trick as Trueman did on Kenzan by forcibly imposing a memory onto Yugi that artificially creates that inner turmoil to envelop Yugi into the darkness, but then you could argue that Karibo multiplies and protects Yugi from such tricks. Mixing manga and anime canons again, Dark Side of the Dimensions also throws a wrench here because while Yugi doesn't have the assembled puzzle with him, you can still argue that his connection to the Pharaoh and even more powerful monster spirits like Dark Magician and the Egyptian gods could protect Yugi from any shenanigans because those bonds are beyond time. But if we want to stick strictly with anime canon, my conclusion is that Yugi's fate is similar to Kaiba's. Trueman doesn't actually defeat Yugi because without psychological warfare, he certainly isn't a good enough duelist to defeat the King of Games. But without the protection offered by a fused spirit, Darkness in his ultimate form can still capture Yugi. Did Trueman defeat Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey? Based on all of this, my answer is that it's possible he did, but it wasn't necessary. And more specifically, to provide an answer for each one, he likely defeated Joey with psychological warfare, and while Trueman could not defeat Kaiba and Yugi in duels, Darkness in his near omnipotent state could still pull them into his world because as individual souls, they do not have the protection Judai has being fused with Yubel. That would then square away the initial quote where neither of these three duelists flowed naturally into the world of darkness, but darkness still forcibly took them. So those are my thoughts on how Trueman/Darkness managed to take down the three best duelists in the world. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think Trueman or Darkness defeated these three in a duel? Did he forcibly pull them into the world of darkness? Or did they manage to escape altogether? Drop your theories in the comments as well as any other questions about the anime and manga that you'd like a deeper discussion on. For another one, you can check out my deep dive on the question of who won between Yugi and Joey at the end of Battle City. And be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this in the future.